So, with the overthrow in Venezuela, there was a vacuum that was filled very quickly with a leadership that looks to be working in alliance to an extent with the United States. In Mexico, there seems to be a willingness to work with the United States as opposed to filling those kind of topples. However, in places like Iran, and as you alluded to with what Erdogan's direction may be, and the Muslim Brotherhood, there is a religious aspect as well there that is different to just carrot and stick response. So, could you comment on what the Muslim Brotherhood actually is, and how much the religious aspect of it all it plays a different role compared to other regime shifts?
Look, Muslim Brotherhood are a Sunni terrorist organization. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, are members of the broader Muslim Brotherhood. They date back to Salafist Wahhabists, proponents of a guy called Qutb, which came out of Egypt. Really unsavory characters, and I think the reality here is that we can't reason with unreasonable people. It's quite difficult to have any dealings with jihadists, Islamists. Now, that's not saying that the 1.9 billion adherents to the Muslim religion, one of three great Abrahamic religions. Not all Muslims are Islamists, but Muslim Brotherhood is not a benign form of Islam. Muslim Brotherhood is a politically driven theocracy that's trying to establish a global caliphate. They not only provide an unacceptable safety risk to the Jewish state, Muslim Brotherhood provide an unacceptable safety risk to the secular, the benign dictator in Egypt, President El-Sisi, but also the House of Saud, which is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The biggest targets on the agenda for Muslim Brotherhood. It's not Israel, it's actually Mecca and Medina, but they also pose an existential risk to Christians and Jews in Israel, based on the fact that the Temple Mount, the Al Quds Mosque, is the third holiest site in the Muslim faith.
So I'm talking more from the aspect of the how much a carrot and the stick response can work the same way that it has in seemingly adjacent conflicts.
As it relates to Iran, I think that the average Iranian is quite a secular and tolerant and progressive people, and so I'm far more optimistic as to the prognosis of Persia, modern day Iran, than I am to modern day Anatolia, Turkey. I see that at the end of the day, the people of Iran will author their tomorrow. And as President Trump has messaged very clearly, help was on its way. Help has arrived now where they're doing the heavy lifting. But at the end of the day, it'll be the people of Iran that need to exercise their agency. Things can only go one of three ways: better, worse, or stay the same. I think that in terms of nation states, there's a carrots and sticks approach, where it's in the world's best interests for a modern uh, form of government comes about in Iran. That will take time, um, probably years, if not tens of years, but it's infinitely better than the descent into madness that the Ayatollahs have been providing, with what I think in time will be seen as malfeasance in terms of former US administration policy towards Iran, JCPOA, Biden and Obama level policies. But look, I don't make a political perspective. I've been apolitical across the whole of my first career. But I think that we've now got the benefit of what has actually played out with Iran, with the Ayatollahs, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the President Obama signature policy, which was supported by the gang of Western European nations, I think will be looked at in a more accurate but very critical sense has been a source of great instability
A Neville
and
Chamberlain-like moment.
profound loss of life. Yeah, I think that if that policy was in the field of medicine, there'd be a class action that the lawyers would litigate. It in my view, has been a causal factor in the loss of hundreds of thousands of lives in the Middle East and even further afield.
And do actions like this have any bearing or effect to your military expertise on China's possibility of attacking Taiwan and the Chinese and the South China Sea, and Putin's willingness to go further in Ukraine?
Yeah, look, there's a great game playing out not only in the Middle East between the American eagle, the Russian bear, and the Chinese panda. Russia is decisively engaged in the Ukraine. Um, there's a vast loss of life, and they're pouring a lot of their treasure into that effort. The economy is contracting as sanctions bite, but Russia has been mobilized for war for a number of years. Um, China, what an amazing country of what gusting 1.5 billion people, but an odious leader and an odious ruling class in the Chinese Communist Party. Truly horrific governing structures that brutally suppress any dissent in the Middle Kingdom. Um, there's challenges that they're facing at the moment because their incursions into the US sphere, not only in Venezuela but into the Panama Canal, have undergone a reversion where they've lost their source of cheap energy from Venezuela and now cheap energy from Iran, and that is putting an odious regime into a much reduced position. There's chess pieces geostrategically that are being placed between the world's democracies led by the US under the current Trump administration and what previous regimes have talked about as an axis of evil. There are challenges that we're facing with some of the threat forces, and we've named them. Qatar is an odious regime, Turkey, Russia under Putin, China under Xi, formerly Venezuela under Maduro. There's North Korea under Kim. There's actually no moral equivalence between those dictatorships and what we may opine in the argy-bargy of US or Israeli politics between left and right.
So to those that protest and fear military action like what has just taken place, what do you have to say for why it is so integral and important to Western civilization that these actions do take place?
Yeah, look, I can sort of empathize and relate partially with platforms such as the Australian Greens that are rabid America haters and rabid anti-Semites. They think that they can just demand the Jewish state or America to apologize and compromise into a better tomorrow. I wish I was raising my kids in the universe that those odious, opportunistic individuals believe that we exist in. I think that there is a clash of civilizations that is playing out at the moment, as Samuel T. Huntington predicted, where we need to, I think, apply the guidance of the founder of modern liberalism, John Stuart Mill, who reminds us that while war is an ugly thing, it's not the ugliest of things. We would only need to contemplate with we don't need to contemplate what peace may look like as defined by Al Qaeda, Islamic State, Muslim Brotherhood, or the Ayatollahs to to suggest that we're living in a Dylan Thomas poem where we choose not to go gentle into that good night, will rage against the dying of the light. I think the simple binary that we face at the moment in this consequential age in which we're raising our kids is that we have values that are worth defending, where we've got a simple binary choice: stick up for our family, our values, and our way of life, or live with the consequences of our complacency and cravenness. And I think that the Greens leader of Germany um, is right when he mentioned around the 12-day war in June 2025 that Israel is doing the heavy lifting for the whole of the world. A nuclear-armed theocratic dictatorship in Persia actually presents an existential risk to our way of life in distant Australia, in New Zealand, in the US, Canada. It poses an existential safety risk to democratic traditions and rules globally.